Delight, can you please come into the Cuppa of Life Cafe and show us your cuppa?
Morning, Luke. Here we go.
And what is that in your cup?
This is a turmeric latte, and it's really yummy, and it's a super great drink because it's got turmeric in it, which contains curcumin, which is a potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. So it's really good body, brain, but it needs to be mixed with something with fat in it. So I make mine with coconut milk. That increases the bioavailability. If you have it dry, it doesn't do the same thing. That's why when they did all the research and they discovered that people that consume this, they consume it in curries, which is in India where they actually first started the research. And they saw, these people do really well, but it's because they have it with ghee or with coconut milk or with coconut butter. And so there we go. So cheers.
That is amazing.
When I was doing my master's, I was looking at a group of really smart school kids, some of whom were doing really well at school and the other group who were not doing well at school. And I said, hey, what's your favorite food? And every one of the kids in the experimental group, that's the kids who were doing poorly at school but were very smart and capable of doing more, all of them loved junk food. And the control group, that's all the kids that were really smart and were doing well, didn't. They liked Sunday roast and baked potatoes and so on. And I went, wow, because very seldom in research do you see a very clear demarcation between your groups. You know, very seldom do you see like 100% in either camp. So I was like really amazed. And I thought, I'll take a couple of days off, a couple of weeks off, a couple of months off, and I'll check this thing out. You know, does food affect the brain? There were researchers in different parts of the world checking out this connection, but they weren't well known and they weren't really at the forefront because we thought, you know, the body was the body and the brain was the brain and the brain was special and blah, blah. So it took me a long time to figure out that this was a really complex, very important and very critical part of brain health. The first thing is, we need to have a brain that's well nourished before we can implement any changes.
Do you think nutrition is the most vital thing to boost our energy with our brain, or is sleep just as important?
Well, they like inextricably linked. They're intimately linked because if you have problems with your blood glucose because you're eating poorly or because you're very stressed, then what happens is you can't sleep properly either. Okay. And when you don't sleep properly, then your blood glucose gets affected and then you crave foods to give you energy and then you end up putting on weight and then you become stressed. So it's very difficult to tease them apart. We use a lot of nutrients to make adrenaline for stress, and we also use very many of the same nutrients to make something like serotonin and then melatonin. So nutrients are kind of like the foundation. They're the information that we need to be able to do lots of things in our body and our brain. We've got zinc, we've got magnesium, we've got vitamin C. All of those are nutrients required to make adrenaline. So when we're very stressed, we use up a lot of those nutrients to make adrenaline because adrenaline is a survival hormone. Nutrition is the foundation here. And the next slide will show people how serotonin is made. And you know, you can compare these two slides and you can say to yourself, well, look, it's very much similar nutrients. And as I said, you know, survival trumps sleep always. You can't be sleeping when there's a tiger in the bushes. So it's important to know that nutrition is really the foundation. Walnuts are great for the brain, but walnuts are not full of omega-3, which is what the popular media tells us all the time. And they're always saying, walnuts brain, walnuts brain. Walnuts are great for the brain because of the omega-6 content, which is very important for the brain as well, which the media doesn't tell you either. Blueberries, super healthy for the brain. They contain special compounds that help neurons stay really healthy and work together really well. So walnuts and blueberries, both great. Olive oil is also good, but not because of the fat content, because of all the other things in the olive oil. And sweet potatoes are great. Stable energy and lots of beta carotene, which gets converted into vitamin A, which is a great antioxidant for our fatty brain. So all of those are good brain foods. 60% of the dry weight of the brain is made up of fat. So if we took all the water out, 60% left is fat. And of that fat, 20 to 25% needs to be made of a very particular kind of fat, which must be undamaged. And most of the fat in the crisps is the damaged kind of fat, which is really bad for the brain. Because when people's cholesterol level is very low, they actually suffer from more mental health challenges, research has shown us. We need cholesterol to be able to make cortisol. It's like the foundation of cortisol. So the more stressed you are, the more your body has to make cholesterol to be able to make cortisol. And so the best and most efficient way to reduce cholesterol is to reduce your stress level, because then you don't need to make so much cortisol of it. But it's most important for people to understand that the food that we eat doesn't just help the brain function optimally, it's also involved in the structure of the brain. Earlier, fat forms a very important part of the cell membrane, the neuronal membrane. So that's the structure of the fat, and so does protein. So it's structure and function that are impacted when our diet isn't optimal. And, when we're stressed, we choose to eat the kinds of foods that give us a quick energy boost and a quick feeling of, hey, I feel good. And those foods are unfortunately the kinds of foods that are highly processed, lots of sugar and so on. And they actually give us a little bit of an opioid lift, which is interesting. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. So it actually lifts your mood and you actually feel, really a whole lot better until your blood glucose plummets again, and then your mood and your energy go down again. So the most important thing to do is try and keep our blood glucose stable. And, this isn't about deprivation at all, not at all. And I'll tell you another little secret is that flavor molecules disperse very efficiently in fat and not so in water. So this means that if you make sure all your food always has good fats with it, you will feel a lot more satisfied when you eat that food, because your flavor molecules will be dispersing optimally. So making sure you have a lot of fat with your food, good fat, will make the flavor better. It'll keep your blood glucose stable. And then when we keep our blood glucose stable, we don't have those cravings. So it's kind of like a multi-pronged approach. But if we think about blood glucose as the primary thing to keep stable, then we choose our carbohydrates with care, and we choose our fat to combine with the carbs in a really good way, and the clean protein.
What are some, top simple food tips that we can be applying to our day-to-day to improve our brain function?
But we do need a decent breakfast, even if it isn't at 6 a.m. in the morning. If you have breakfast later, just try and inch it back by 5 or 10 minutes each day until you're eating at a time that you figure out gives you stable blood glucose for the day. It's not hard to give yourself a really delicious and decadent meal consistently throughout the day so that you can keep your blood glucose stable. And then, I do a meal prep on Sunday where I prep some quinoa, I prep some, baked sweet potato, I prep a number of different things, pesto, salad dressing. So when a meal comes up, I just go and I toss it all together. So we can make it easy for ourselves to eat healthy if we just do a little bit of preparation. When most people think about healthy food, they think about kale leaves and green smoothies and, crushed up flax seeds. It really sounds boring and terrible. And if there's anything that turns the brain off, it's being bored. So we really don't want a bored brain. So our food needs to be tasty. It needs to be kind of decadent. So I've got lots of great chocolate recipes in both of my books. And I really want people to understand that this isn't about deprivation. It's about enticing ourselves to eat the best possible food that's got the best information to keep our brains really, really happy and help us cope with stress and age really well. All these things happen when you feed your brain optimally. So I always suggest that people get their bloods done so that they can find out about their vitamin D status, because it's a very, very important hormone. And there's a lot of evidence to show it supports good immunity, it supports good brain function, it supports good mood, and it supports hormonal function as well, and bone. So just have it done. We don't get enough sun, and we shouldn't be lying in the sun for extended periods of time, because the sun does really cause damage as well. So we need this balance, but we need vitamin D. Well, and I think the most important thing to remember is color. So have a lot of color on your plate. So yes, like a handful of blueberries a day. Then the next day have raspberries. Raspberries have great gut health, which we haven't had a chance to discuss, which is also critical. And maybe the next day have some blackberries. Have sweet potatoes maybe every second or third day in the week. Then have, capsicum, have butternut. Color is extremely important. Color doesn't just bring nutrients with it, it also brings the right kinds of fiber.
Is it better to have things fresh as well, or by cooking it, do we lose some of those nutrients?
Great question. There are many foods that are water soluble, and that means that we lose the nutrients when we cook them. And that's things like cabbage. We lose vitamin C when we cook cabbage, and also some with broccoli that happens. But then the other foods, like with butternut and pumpkin, they've got vitamin A, which is fat soluble, so it isn't as damaged as badly. But the best thing to do is lightly steam the food without contact with water. That's the best. And otherwise, also eat a lot of food raw if your digestion is up to it, or you can build up to it.